She bought a dying dog just to look good for the cameras. But when that same dog dragged her from a burning building, she realized she had everything backwards about what really matters in life. Victoria Sterling was everything you'd expect from a tech billionaire at 35, sharp-suited, ice-cold, and ruthlessly ambitious. Her penthouse overlooked Manhattan like a fortress, filled with expensive art she never looked at and designer furniture no one ever sat on. She'd built her empire by crushing competitors and firing employees without blinking. The media called her the Iron Lady of Silicon Valley, and she wore that title like armor. But lately, that armor was cracking. A series of brutal exposés had painted her as heartless, firing a single mother on Christmas Eve, refusing to donate to children's hospitals, stepping over a homeless man outside her office building while cameras rolled. Her stock prices were plummeting, and her board was getting restless. Victoria needed a PR miracle, and she needed it fast. Then there was Charlie, a 7-year-old golden retriever with cloudy eyes and graying fur, lying in the corner of Manhattan Animal Rescue. The shelter volunteer, Sarah, spoke in hushed tones about his condition, advanced kidney disease. Maybe 6 months left. No one wanted to adopt a dying dog. Charlie had been surrendered by an elderly owner who couldn't afford his medical bills. He spent his days curled up on a thin blanket, watching hopefully as younger, healthier dogs found families. The idea came from Victoria's crisis management team during an emergency weekend meeting. "We need to humanize you," her publicist Marcus insisted, pacing around a conference table. "Something that shows your softer side. Charity work isn't enough anymore. People see right through that. What about rescuing an animal?" suggested her social media manager. "Nothing says heart of gold like saving a shelter pet." Victoria scoffed. "I don't do pets. They're messy, needy, and I travel constantly." Exactly why it would be so impactful, Marcus pressed. "Think about it. Busy billionaire takes time from empire building to save a life. We'll document the whole journey. Adoption day, vet visits, heartwarming moments at home. The media will eat it up." But Victoria's assistant, the ever-calculating Rebecca, had done her research. "There's a dog at Manhattan Animal Rescue, terminal kidney disease, old, unwanted. If we adopt him," she paused meaningfully, "when he passes naturally in a few months, you'll be the grieving pet parent who gave him the best final chapter. Maximum sympathy, maximum media coverage." Victoria's eyes glinted. It was perfect. A short-term commitment with long-term PR benefits. Set it up. The adoption was orchestrated like a military operation. Cameras captured Victoria walking through the shelter, her expression carefully arranged into one of compassionate concern. She'd spent hours with media coach perfecting that look. Soft eyes, slight smile, hands clasped gently. When she knelt beside Charlie's kennel, the old dog lifted his head weakly. For a moment, something flickered in Victoria's chest. He looked so tired, so defeated. But she pushed the feeling aside and focused on her performance. "This one," she announced to the shelter staff, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "I want to give him the love he deserves." The cameras rolled as she signed the adoption papers, her publicist feeding lines to reporters about second chances and unconditional love. Victoria played her part perfectly, even tearing up on cue when Charlie was loaded into her luxury SUV. Back at her penthouse, Victoria set up what Marcus called content opportunities. Dog beds in photogenic spots, premium food bowls for the kitchen shots, a wardrobe of adorable sweaters for Charlie's medical appointments. Every moment was documented for social media. Hashtag Charlie and Victoria became trending, with millions watching the heartwarming updates. Charlie, meanwhile, seemed grateful just to have a warm place to sleep. He followed Victoria around quietly, his tail giving a gentle wag whenever she acknowledged him. The vet visits were frequent. His kidneys were failing faster than expected, but Charlie bore the treatments with dignified patience. Victoria found herself genuinely surprised by how undemanding he was. He didn't bark, didn't chew furniture, didn't expect constant attention. He simply existed peacefully in her space, seemingly content to be near her. Still, she maintained emotional distance. This was business, not sentiment. 3 months into their arrangement, Victoria's carefully controlled world began to shift in ways she didn't expect. It started small. Charlie would rest his head on her foot while she worked late, or position himself between her and the door during video calls, as if protecting her. When she had the flu, he stayed by her bed for 2 days straight, only leaving when Rebecca came to feed him. "He's getting attached," Rebecca warned during one of their strategy sessions. "The vet says dogs with kidney disease can become especially clingy. Don't let it complicate things." But Victoria was starting to notice things about Charlie that the cameras didn't capture. How he seemed to sense her moods, staying closer on stressful days. How his tail wagged harder when she came home, even when she'd been gone only an hour. How he'd gained a little weight and seemed more alert since coming to live with her, as if having a purpose, even just being her companion, had given him renewed energy. The real turning point came on a rainy Thursday evening. Victoria was working late in her home office when she heard Charlie whimpering in the hallway. She found him standing by the front door, hackles raised, staring intently at something she couldn't see. "What is it, boy?" she asked, and for the first time, the endearment felt natural instead of performative. Charlie looked at her, then back at the door, whimpering more urgently. That's when Victoria smelled it. Smoke. The electrical fire had started in the building's walls, spreading faster than anyone anticipated. By the time Victoria smelled smoke, the hallways were already filling with toxic fumes. Her penthouse's sophisticated alarm system had malfunctioned, leaving her with no warning except Charlie's keen senses. Victoria's first instinct was to grab her laptop and important documents, but Charlie had other ideas. The dying dog she bought for Sympathy suddenly displayed remarkable strength, grabbing her sleeve and pulling toward the emergency exit. When she hesitated, he barked, sharp, commanding sound she'd never heard from him. Okay, I'm coming," she gasped, following him through the smoke-filled corridor. But Charlie wasn't done. As they reached the stairwell, Victoria stumbled, overwhelmed by smoke inhalation. Her vision blurred, her legs gave out. Charlie, despite his own labored breathing, positioned himself beside her. Using his body as support, he helped guide her down 17 flights of stairs, stopping whenever she needed to rest, never leaving her side. Firefighters found them on the 8th floor. Victoria collapsed against the wall, Charlie lying protectively across her legs, both of them struggling to breathe. The paramedics later said that without Charlie's intervention, Victoria would have died from smoke inhalation. As oxygen masks covered both their faces in the ambulance, Victoria looked into Charlie's cloudy eyes and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Pure, overwhelming gratitude. Not for what someone could do for her or how they could benefit her image, but for unconditional love freely given. The media coverage of the rescue was unlike anything Victoria had experienced. But this time, she wasn't performing. When reporters asked about Charlie's heroism, her tears were real. When they wanted to know about their bond, she spoke from the heart about a dog who had taught her what loyalty actually meant. Charlie's health had deteriorated from the smoke exposure, and the vet delivered the news Victoria had been expecting months earlier. Weeks, not months, remained. But instead of seeing this as the perfect PR conclusion she'd originally planned, Victoria was devastated. She canceled all public appearances and spent Charlie's remaining days doing something she'd never done before, simply being present. No cameras, no social media updates, no strategic content, just a woman and her dog, making the most of borrowed time. She cooked him plain chicken and rice when his appetite faded. She carried him to his favorite sunny spot by the window each morning. She talked to him about everything, her loneliness, her regrets, her fears about running a company built on calculated coldness rather than genuine care. When Charlie passed peacefully in his sleep 3 weeks later, Victoria held him and cried harder than she had since childhood. The grief was overwhelming, but it was also cleansing. For the first time in years, she felt completely, authentically human. The funeral was private, just Victoria, a few shelter volunteers who had known Charlie, and Sarah, who had become a genuine friend. Victoria established the Charlie Sterling Foundation, funding medical care for senior shelter animals. But more importantly, she began changing how she ran her company, leading with empathy instead of intimidation. 6 months after Charlie's death, Victoria returned to Manhattan Animal Rescue. not for cameras or publicity, but because her penthouse felt empty without paws clicking on marble floors. She adopted Rosie, a 12-year-old beagle with diabetes, and then Max, a senior pit bull mix with arthritis. Her friends thought she'd lost her mind. Why choose animals with expensive medical needs and shortened lifespans? But Victoria understood something now that she'd missed her entire adult life. Love isn't about what you can gain from someone. It's about what you're willing to give, especially when you know it's temporary. Charlie had shown her that the most meaningful connections aren't transactions or strategic advantages. They're the quiet moments of mutual care between two beings who choose to show up for each other. Victoria had bought a dying dog thinking she was purchasing sympathy. Instead, she'd found her soul. And while Charlie couldn't give her more years, he'd given her something far more valuable: the chance to become the person she was always meant to be. Sometimes the greatest rescue isn't saving someone else's life. Sometimes it's letting them save yours. If you want more stories like that, please subscribe. Thank you, and until next time.